Welcome, sports fans. Happy New Year. 2021 is here. I'm here always with my co-host, Joe.
Happy New Year, everybody.
I'm excited to be here. This is episode 3 of our podcast. Tonight's episode is about Mike Tyson, Iron Mike Tyson,
Yes.
the baddest man in the planet. Joe, I followed boxing for a lot of years, and I loved when Mike Tyson was fighting in his prime. Was the best for me fighting ever. Just being around and watching and seeing this man just demolish everybody.
Definitely, Mike. We grew up watching Mike Tyson. It started in our early childhood, and we were lucky to grow up in that era of the baddest man on the planet, one of the greatest fighters of all time. He was invincible, and there was nothing like the excitement of a Tyson fight. And many we watched together.
Unreal. I mean, just to me, that was. I know people talk about Muhammad Ali and George Foreman and Joe Frazier and all these other fighters many years ago, but Mike Tyson, again, baddest man on the planet. I mean, I remember, I think it was the fight with Michael Spinks. Right, and Michael Spinks, if sports fans, if you're familiar with him, he had a pretty good boxing career. I think he was a Olympic medalist on the USA boxing team, and he was a really good professional fighter. And I remember before that fight, I thought maybe Michael Spinks would give Mike Tyson, a challenge.
A lot of people thought that.
But boy, was I dead wrong. I mean, he demolished him. He
demolished him in the first round, Mike. And it's funny you bring up Michael Spinks because Mike Tyson has, over 50 wins in his career, right?
I believe it's 50.
So that one, there's many memorable ones, but that one stands out to me. True story. I'm with my family in Atlantic City, New Jersey. The fight happened to take place there, but we weren't watching it live. But we just happened to get back to our hotel room. And we put on the TV, and to our surprise, the Tyson fight is coming on. Now, back then, there was no pay-per-view. It was regular, say, HBO cable, and we didn't have that at home. So we were like, whoa, what a score. Well, me and my father both flipping out. The Tyson fight's on. I go to the bathroom in the first round. True story. While I'm in the bathroom, the fight started. I come back, and the fight is over. I see Michael Spinks on his back. I missed the fight.
You and a lot of other people, I bet.
Yeah.
And ironically, I'm sure those other fights, the same thing happened. I believe Trevor Burbeck, he knocked him out pretty quickly. I think it was in the second round.
Yes, yeah, he had a bunch of wins. I mean, he was known to knock guys out in 60 seconds. You couldn't blink. You had to make sure you were on time to those fights. He had numerous wins in that first round and a ton of knockouts.
And trying to remember, maybe Joe, you remember, who was the guy he fought? It was 17 seconds. Do you remember who that fight was? I think he knocked him out in 17 seconds.
17 seconds. I don't remember. No, I don't recall that one, Mike. We'll have to look that up.
All right.
But he knocked out Alex Stewart in the first round. Carl Williams, first round TKO.
I remember that fight. I remember the Carl Williams fight. I know he knocked out Larry Holmes, but that was Larry Holmes at the end of his career.
Yeah.
Not at the prime.
Peter McNeely took out in the first round. That was a fluke. A flop, I should say. Peter McNeely was a fluke, not Mike Tyson. But I wanted to get back to the aura of Mike Tyson. I mean, you mentioned the baddest man on the planet. The aura that he carried, just the way he was so invincible, and when he made his ring walk, it was like something to see. He would come out like with this death stare, and you could see he was so focused and in the zone. You could see the rage in his face, and then he had the entourage. Like he'd have these back then he had this gangster type mentality, and the guys he was with carried that persona as well. So he was hated. He was so good, but at that time he was such a badass mentality that you rooted for the underdog. I always wanted to see an upset, and more times than not, that didn't happen. As you say, he would slay. He was like the giant slayer. He was only 5'10", 5'11", knocking out guys who were much bigger than him, 6'5", 6'6", in 60 to 90 seconds. But then came along Buster Douglas in 1990. Mike Tyson was 37-0. We could talk about that later or get into that now.
We could talk about Buster Douglas. I remember watching that fight, and I have to be honest with you, Joe. I had no idea who Buster Douglas was.
I didn't either.
I'm watching a fight, and
you thought he was the next victim of Mike Tyson?
I mean, yeah, I thought like, all right, we're watching it. The it's in Tokyo. Fight's going to be ending. It's going to end in the first round, and and then he'll probably go party in Tokyo, Japan, and enjoy the rest of the night. But it didn't turn out that way.
Douglas was a 42-1 underdog that night.
I wish I bet on that fight.
Yeah, same here, for sure.
But here's the thing: even though Mike Tyson he lost to Buster Douglas, okay, it took 10 rounds to finally beat Mike Tyson. Just think about how dominant Mike Tyson was in his wins.
Well, yeah, I mean, Tyson was, he was 37-0 going into that fight. Buster Douglas happened to fight the fight of his career, the best fight of his career. He had some added motivation. He lost his mom while in training for that fight. His mom had passed, so he was mourning the death of his mom, and he used that for a burning desire to motivate himself and go into that fight. Tyson, on the other hand, might have been plateauing, or if not plateauing, might have been dealing with an issue of overconfidence. I mean, you're named, everyone knows you as the baddest man on the planet. You're knocking out guys in 60 to 90 seconds. You train months and months and months for these fights, and the fight only lasts a minute. So I would have to feel that one would buy into that hype, and you have to start letting down a bit.
I agree, but that's exactly what I was trying to say before. It even though Buster Douglas fought the fight of his life, it still took him 10 rounds.
Still took 10
rounds.
And Mike Tyson knocked Douglas down late. Although Douglas was beating him to the punch, out-punching him, out-boxing him, Tyson, in either that, maybe it was the 8th or 9th round, late in that fight, he knocked Douglas down, and we all thought it was over.
I remember a friend of ours, a mutual friend, when we were talking about this fight, and he knows a lot about boxing. He told me that because Mike Tyson was so dominant in most of his fights, I should say most, pretty much all of his fights, he wasn't used to fighting the 8th, 9th, and 10th rounds. And he thought that maybe because of his lack of experience of going the distance, it hurt him in that fight with Buster Douglas.
Definitely. I would imagine Mike Tyson probably, along with thousands, if not millions of others, anticipated that fight would end. He's facing a 42-1 underdog. We expected it to end in 3 rounds or less. Many people thought it would end in the first round. Buster Douglas, however, if he was going to get the win, we know he trained for 10 or 12 rounds. He was training to go the distance.
Exactly. And the other thing I liked about the Mike Tyson era, back in my golden era of boxing, was, as you know, Joe, Nintendo's Mike Tyson Punch-Out.
Yes, one of my favorite games, and I think still till today one of the best games of all time. I know there's many the new wave of video game systems. PS5 came out, but still, I say that is up there with one of you got to be in my top 5 best video games of all time.
Mike Tyson Punch-Out by Nintendo is right up there with Madden football.
Oh yeah,
without a doubt. And ironically, Mike Tyson is only 5'10", but in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, he looks like he's 8 feet tall.
Yes.
And then you're fighting him, right?
Yeah.
And the person he's fighting is like 2 feet tall. It's just hilarious.
Little Mac.
Hilarious.
It was great. That was such a great game. One of the best parts of that game was that Mike Tyson was the boss, the final boss at the end. You had to go through many, many tough opponents, and definitely they had a whole lineup of characters, great different personalities and everything. So it was really awesome. But the final boss, Mike Tyson, and it was realistic because Mike Tyson was knocking out people in 60 seconds or less. And when you finally earn the rights to fight him, you get up to the final boss. For the first 90 seconds of the fight, if he hits you with one punch, you go down to the canvas. And that was realistic of Mike Tyson because he had that kind of knockout power.
Exactly.
So I couldn't wait to get up to him, and then I thought like I would never beat him, and then finally one day it took many tries, and I finally got over the hump and did it. I'm like, wow, what a feeling.
Joe,
Did you ever beat him?
never in all my
Really?
years of playing.
Oh,
I
wow.
tried. I never did.
Okay.
I think I gave up after like 30 times.
All right.
I was
Well,
yeah.
the key was if you could survive that first 90-second onslaught, where he just keeps throwing uppercuts one after another, wild, fast uppercuts, and you just got to keep. You do not try to throw a punch. This was a secret, but you had to figure this out on your own. Although if it were today, you probably would have been able to Google it. But back then, that didn't exist. So you just got to do nothing but dodge for the first 90 seconds. After that, he stops throwing the uppercuts. He starts jabbing. And then if he lands a jab, it does damage, but it doesn't knock you down. So that the key to have a chance was to survive the first 90 seconds without getting hit.
Yeah, basically, I was Michael Spinks in that game. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
Well, I was probably 50 or 100 times before I finally got him.
Yeah, so you're probably wondering, sports fans, why we decided to talk about Mike Tyson. Well, besides both of us agreeing that Mike Tyson was probably the baddest man on the planet and one of the best boxers ever, we happened to watch the exhibition fight on November 28th at my good friend's house, Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr., another great fighter. And I'm proud to say that I do have a pair of boxing shorts signed by Roy Jones Jr. hung up in the studio.
Yes, awesome artifact there. Yeah, one of my favorites here. That's awesome.
I just remember before the fight on November 28th, I think we were both excited to see it, even though they're in their 50s. I think Roy Jones Jr. was 51. I think Mike Tyson was 54
Yes.
when they fought.
Yes, correct.
And I remember just being excited to, even though it was exhibition, just to watch both of them fight. And I guess we could talk about sports fans, as you probably are aware, it ended up as a tie, a draw. But I believe
Right.
Mike Tyson won the fight. What do you think, Joe?
I believe Tyson won the fight. Getting back to what you were saying earlier on, Tyson 54, Jones 51. I went into this very, very excited. Despite the age, I mean, Tyson looked like he was in phenomenal shape. I mean, I saw him in past years. It might have been 2013, 2014, when he did a documentary. Or he was on Broadway for a while doing The Undisputed Truth, and he had gained a lot of weight, and he just got in unbelievable shape for this. And he has greatness in his veins. You looking at him and seeing how physically fit he was, you know he still carries that knockout power. He still has that rage. He's still Mike Tyson. However, in the fight, I didn't see that come.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're in their 50s, but I did notice one thing about Mike Tyson, even at age 54. I noticed that in the fight with Roy Jones Jr., Mike Tyson was still the dominant presence in the ring. What I mean by is, like, I'm not a boxing expert, but I know one of the greatest skills I thought Mike Tyson had was his ability to be the initiator in the contact. In other words, he come out and be the aggressor.
Yes.
And he still had great what I say balance from his legs to move with the power. I still noticed that he had great balance, which generates power. It might not have been as powerful like it was in his prime, but he still had the balance to move and be the aggressor. And I feel like Roy Jones Jr. was just avoiding to try to get hurt. He wasn't really instigating any contact.
Yeah, Roy Jones fought a very defensive fight, which was probably what we expected. But one thing that disappointed me was that Roy Jones was clinching a lot. He wasn't really engaging in the fight. And one of the things that disappointed me the most in that fight was that Tyson seemed to allow Roy Jones Jr. to clinch. Instead of pushing him off and trying to get separation, Tyson engaged in the clinch. And I really... I hope I'm wrong, but I kind of felt like he was holding back. I kind of felt, again, seeing what kind of shape Tyson was in and how he was a dominant presence, that he really could have taken over that fight if he wanted to.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, he wasn't allowed to bite anyone's ear off. So
No, he couldn't. But
so that kind of hurt him a little bit. But.
Hey, I give Roy Jones credit for stepping in the ring with him. I wouldn't want to get in the ring with Tyson. However, after seeing that fight, maybe I would. I do, however, Mike, want to make a proposition to you. I have seen you in action, and I've known you all my life since we were kids. Of course, when I say in action, we're talking about going back decades. But I know he's starting this Legends Only League, and I would be your biggest fan. I would help train you. I think you can beat Mike Tyson. As a matter of fact, you might recall this line from a song. You could tell me the title of the song if you remember. Yo, Mike, you're rough like a freight train, smooth like ice. Yo, Mike, I think you could beat Mike Tyson.
Joe, I forgot what's the name? I forgot, Joe. I can't remember the name of that song.
DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I think I can beat Mike Tyson. Great music.
That's
video.
Right. You're right. I forgot about that. I do. That's a classic.
That's a classic.
I do love my DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
Yeah.
Summertime is one of my favorite songs by the two of them. I don't know if you know what? I'm always up for a challenge, Joe, but I might have to take a hard pass on that one.
Okay. Well, just the shape you're in, and what you're continuing to do physically with your fitness and nutrition, just keep in mind, I think you can do it. And to me, that's all that counts.
I appreciate it, Joe. I appreciate it.
I know you'll certainly put up a better fight than Nate Robinson did with Jake Paul.
Oh, my God. Oh, that Nate Robinson. Dude, you were a good basketball player, but I hope that was your last fight ever, man. I hope.
Stick to basketball.
Exactly. Stick to basketball.
Well, that fight you could see was for real. Jake Paul was going out there to hurt him, and Nate Robinson paid the price. Those guys were going all out, and that was proof that boxing, you can't, it's something that has to be taken seriously. You can't fool around and get in there when, a lifelong basketball player stepping in against Jake Paul's been taking this fight game seriously, and he looked impressive. I think he has, there's been some propositions. Is it true that they signed the fight? Is he going to be fighting Conor McGregor? Or
they're talking about it.
Yeah.
I've been hearing things. And Joe, I'm gonna admit something to you. I never heard of this guy before until that night. Apparently, he's very popular.
Very popular YouTuber.
Yeah.
Nowhere near as popular as our podcast, I'm sure. But,
no, agreed. No way.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Mike, I was going to get to this in the beginning. I had a few offers. I've been getting calls from ESPN. Just this morning, Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres asked me to be a guest. Saturday SNL, they asked me to be a guest on the show tonight, but I told them we were recording episode 3, so that went out the window. And the last one for you, what was it? Kelly and Ryan Seacrest. Kelly called me this morning and wanted me to ask you if you would be interested in replacing Ryan as a host. She said Ryan was getting up there in age, and he's, she's feeling like they're ready for a change, wanted to bring in something. She was interested in bringing in Mike, Kelly and Mike from our show. But I made a mistake, Mike. I reminded her that you were older than Ryan Seacrest, and that kind of went by the wayside. So sorry about that.
I mean, you can't change the age.
No.
Oh, well, next time.
Yeah, maybe next time.
But you know what? Maybe that's a blessing in disguise since we're very busy with our podcast.
Definitely. Yeah. I like Mike and Joe as a better ring to Kelly and Mike, right? Mike.
Yes.
I was going to say, can we talk about some of the top moments in Tyson's career?
I would love that. Let's talk about it.
Okay. So top moment we already spoke about. I'll start. Buster Douglas upset. Huge. In my lifetime, up there in the top 5 moments in sports history that I've witnessed, along with the 86 Mets winning it in 86, the 1980 U.S. hockey team defeating the Russians, although I was only 6 years old, but I saw the videos. It was in my lifetime. The Giants beating the Patriots. Yeah, so Buster Douglas beating Tyson, number 1 for me.
It just reminded me of the fight with Roy Jones Jr., where Mike Tyson admitted the next day that he smoked marijuana before the Roy Jones Jr. fight. And since you brought up Buster Douglas, I bet if he was smoked some marijuana before that fight, he might have won that fight.
Could very well be. Yeah, it had him relaxed in a good state of mind. Yeah, he might have been more focused.
Yeah, I think my number one, even though it's not a win, it's the Evander Holyfield with him biting the air. I believe it was
That was awesome.
Was that fight the third fight between the two of them? Second fight.
Yeah,
that was the second fight.
The third would be now. They were potentially going to do a third one in this Legends League. Maybe it will still happen, but no, that was awesome. Holyfield beat him the first time, knocked him out legitimately. The second time, Holyfield was winning the fight, dominating the action.
Agreed, definitely.
Tyson in frustration,
unfortunately,
took a chunk out of it.
Yeah, unfortunately. That was Mike Tyson not at his best. By that time, his best days as a boxer was gone. But that to me, that was the number one memory because I just never saw anyone bite someone's ear off in a fight, and I was like, really?
It just showed you he was capable of anything. That was part of the excitement of watching a Tyson fight. You never knew what was going to happen. I mean,
well. That brings up the challenge you said about me fighting Mike Tyson. Apparently, I need insurance to cover my ears.
I think we could, as your trainer, I'll try to get them to sign the contract and allow you to wear earmuffs, if that's all right.
I hope so. I mean,
yeah.
I definitely want to make sure that my ears are safe.
I'm not going to send you in the ring with ketchup on your ears, Mike. Don't worry. Well, other moments, I mean, some of the interviews, he just came up with some of the weirdest crap. One time I remember after a fight that he lost, he was telling, what was the guy's name? Gray? Richard Gray, was it? The announcer?
Jim Gray.
Jim Gray, thank you. Yeah, Jim Gray telling him that he broke his back, and he's just saying with a serious face that he broke his back. Telling Lennox Lewis that when he wanted to challenge him to a fight, that he was going to, eat his children, just some of the things he came. And then there was one interview where he flipped out on a reporter. Did you see that? Did you recall that one?
I'm trying to remember.
If not, I could play a clip if that's all right.
Sure.
We might go over on time, but all right, Mike. So yeah, we pulled up the clip here. Thank you, guys. And that's the guys meaning Mike and I. But I did want to touch on before we play that clip for the viewers at home, which I think they'll enjoy, and you as well, Mike. I did want to talk about the fight card results, the judges' scorecard in the fight between Tyson Jones. I'm going to read it to you and then we'll discuss it. WBC, although that fight, Tyson Jones, was an exhibition, they said that they were going to have 3 former fighters who were going to be the judges. Christy Martin, we all remember her, female fighter, good boxer. She had Tyson ahead on points 79-73. So what do you think? That was
I kind of agree with that statement. Yeah, I felt that was a pretty accurate score based on what we saw.
Right. I feel like Tyson won just about every round, arguably, of the 8. Chad Dawson, former pro boxer, 38 years old, he scores it 76-76, a draw. All right?
Yeah, I don't understand how he came up with that conclusion.
Yeah, so now at this point we're saying, okay, I mean, maybe this guy's hoping it's going to be 1-1, and he doesn't want to have the third and deciding vote, so he calls it a draw. But who's gonna give the nod to Roy Jones Jr.? Well, Vinny Pazienza, did he take too many punches in his career? Maybe. 58 years old, his fight score 80-76 in favor of Roy Jones Jr. So there we go.
I don't know his habits, but maybe he got into Mike Tyson's marijuana stash. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not saying but just wondering how he came up with that score.
Well, with Snoop Dogg in the house and Tyson there, to say Vinny Paz maybe was under the influence possible. But I am a fan of Vinny Paz. I do love him. And Bleed for This, awesome movie, by the way, on the Vinny Pazienza story.
He was a good fighter. I liked him.
Yeah, I like colorful fighter. I like Italian Stallion, too.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right, so let's play that clip and check this out, Mike. We'll watch this together.
He's the biggest celebrity than anybody in the city. Everybody wants to see the man. And he's a really dynamic character.
Right, so you read up on him? You sort of followed?
No, I didn't read up on him. I watched him on television.
Right.
In the States, and he's a big hit in the States. Big hit.
Now, some of your critics would say, there's a race for mayor We know you're a convicted rapist. This could hurt his campaign. How would you respond to that?
Hey, I don't know who said that. You're the only one I heard say that. You know what I mean? And I don't have no comment to that, because it's negative and you're being negative. And I met the mayor, right, and nothing they can do about it. So interesting that you come across like a nice guy, but you're really a piece of shit.
Hey,
that comment.
Come on.
That was a piece of fuck you. That was a piece of shit.
We're doing live TV.
Hey, I don't care. What are you gonna do about it?
All right, you got a show that you're doing tonight. We are. A lot of people. We are. Where it comes raw and it's the real truth. Yeah, a lot of people be there to see your show. Just tell us a bit about it.
It speaks for itself. Everyone saw the show.
All right. It's a Broadway production. It went to Vegas. It went to actually 28 cities in the United States. And we're really, really proud to bring it here. And we're actually going to Monaco on October 9th. We're going to be in Monte Carlo. Right. Is it nerve-wracking for you to do something like this, or is it more nervous for you to box? How does it compare?
I don't know. It's more nerve-wracking for me to hear us talking to a rat piece of shit like you.
Come on, Mike.
Not because you're a piece of shit.
All right,
really have to
we're gonna wrap up this interview. Thank you for coming in.
Fuck you.
All right. Yes.
Oh, Mike Tyson, he seemed a little upset in that interview.
Yeah, that's for sure. It was classic. Classic.
Thanks for bringing back the memories. I forgot all about that interview. That was Mike Tyson. Yeah, there's no other man like him.
Yeah, he was there promoting his show, The Undisputed Truth, which was like a stand-up, him giving the truth about his life. And he had a hard life. And there the truth comes out. I mean, there's a guy that just speaks his mind, does what he wants, when he wants. And, it's one of the things there was a time when I hated him and maybe rooted against him because he had that gangster persona and he was so unbeatable, and I always rooted for the underdog. But then as years went on, I became a fan of his, and I root for him today.
Well said, Joe. Excellent. It's like, regardless of his past and whatever, his history, him being in jail, all that stuff. I feel like Mike Tyson now is like a redemption project, and I think from his battles. Growing up, in Brooklyn, childhood, all this other stuff, I feel like he's come a long way and he's improved himself and become a better person.
Yes, yeah, well said, Mike, for sure. I mean, he's become spiritual. He's had this big fundraiser for charity, and you could just see a difference in his personality, his demeanor, it's admirable to see someone come, because he had some hard times and some real dark moments. As that interview is just one of the examples. That Holyfield biting his ear and being in jail and growing up in Brownsville. I remember hearing in his documentary, The Undisputed Truth, by the time he was 13 years old, he was arrested 38 times. He grew up with his mom, who was battling with like drug addiction and just from the hood, and he escaped the hood, and he's still relevant today. I mean, he fought his first fight in 1985 when I was 11 years old, and you and I just watched a fight. This is like 30, 40, so many years later. I don't know.
35 years later.
35 years later, and he's still getting in the ring, still relevant.
That exactly. I mean, Mike Tyson, that name alone, just mentioning that name, I think generations to come, everyone's still going to know who Mike Tyson is. It's like Muhammad Ali. It's just certain people where that name resonates generation after generation. Like you said before, and when I said there was a lot of hard times, good and bad, but I feel like now, as you mentioned, Joe, he's a better person. He's spiritual, and I'm happy to see him doing well. I want him to do well.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, thanks, Mike. And I think the name speaks for itself. We all know that greatness runs through his veins, and him and Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., they go back a long way. They are friends. This was an exhibition fight. If he continues with the league and he steps in the ring again and he continues to train the way he's training, I still think we're going to see flashes of those real exciting moments where we see, because looking at the shape he's in, he still has the knockout power. There's potential. Holyfield Tyson 3 is possibly in the works. I would like to see Tyson, whoever it is, I'd like to see him fight someone where he goes all out and we see that magic again.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to this Legends Only League. I want to see more. I know that DraftKings and the streaming app Trilla is involved in this league with Mike Tyson. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what's going to be out there in the future.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. This has been an outstanding episode. Can we close with this? Maybe a sing-along?
I don't know. Maybe.
Well, thank you, folks. We will see you at the next episode. Stick around as we have some fun with I Think You Can Beat Mike Tyson by DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
Let's get ready to rumble!
I was in Mike's crib one night about 8, and we were watching a couple of Mike Tyson fight tapes. Mike was like,
"Man, you see how hard Tyson's punching?
come on, Mike, the guy was just lunging. Left, right, another KO. If that was you, you'd have been okay, though." The very next day, I gave Russell a ring. With Joe and Pat, we all called Don King. I said, "Yeah, Don, I got a problem."
Tell him, Joe.
"Yeah, what's up? What you saying? You trying to solve them? Forget the small talk. Let's get to the nitty-gritty. My boy versus Iron Mike, 2 months, Trump, Atlantic City." You can beat him, Mike. You got this. And we're going to shock the world. Magic Mike is going to be the next heavyweight champion.
Let's get